Okay, continuing in our series on professionalism, now we're going to talk about preparing to communicate with others. Okay, how do you make yourself an effective communicator by preparation or preparing? Well, to start with, the first thing is to know your audience, and that can include researching who will be there, who you could potentially talk to, simply asking someone else basic information about someone else. Trying to gauge the conversation or the topics that are being discussed already when you join a conversation, that type of thing, to understand somebody's personality, disposition, interests, things like that. The more you can find out about the audience, the better, whether that's an individual or a group of people. Right? Of course, there are different methods for doing that, and I highly encourage you to visit our course series on professional or business communications, where we talk more about that topic. But once again, knowing your audience is essential. Next, individual elements that you need to practice about the communication process, the back and forth. Right? You can practice these things ahead of time, have canned things that you want to talk about, things like introductions, practicing how you introduce yourself to others, how you listen or receive when someone else is introducing themselves, right? The pleasantries that you add there. It's a pleasure to meet you. Very nice to meet you. That type of thing. It can make a strong impact on how the other person perceives you at the outset and start of the communication. Because just like first impressions, the first things that you communicate, how the conversation starts, oftentimes makes a big impact on where it goes and how fruitful it is for you in terms of exposing the person to your professional brand. Okay? Practicing elements of small talk. Now, small talk is just things to talk about that ultimately segue into more important communications. Everything from the weather to what's going on in the room to comments about sports or something that has happened in the news or a public event, something like that, right? All of these things are it's the chit-chat, the things that make someone comfortable with you. Because the main elements of whether someone likes you, or whether someone continues the conversation or extend it with you, is oftentimes a product of fit, whether they believe that they understand you and that they're being understood as part of the communication. So what you're trying to do, once again, is give them the opportunity to show that you're interested in them, show that you're trying to understand something about them, and in return, give them something else, right? And the main way you do that is by asking questions about them. An exercise that I ask my students to do all the time is to attempt to have a conversation with existing friends or acquaintances without using the word I or me throughout the entire communication. I tell them that's probably one of the most effective manners you can endear yourself to others. It shows that you're a good listener and that you're more focused on them than you are on yourself, right? It conveys that, yes, I'm seeking to understand you. I'm less concerned about myself. Generally, the other person in that scenario will reciprocate and ask you similar questions back because they feel like they're being paid attention to, that they are engaging your interest, and in return they will ask you very similar things. They'll reciprocate and ask things very similar about you, and that is a very professional manner of communicating. Okay, so once again, asking questions about yourself, about others without talking about yourself. Actively listening. Right? Making certain that when other people say things, you are engaged, you are paying attention, and that you're giving them notice of that. You're letting them know that what they're saying does interest you, that you are captivated by it, that you are paying attention. And those signals can be anything from a interesting, the head nod, the facial expression that shows that you're paying attention. If you have a question, you can signal that through your facial expressions without actually having to say anything. And then that will alert them to include you in the conversation or accept what you're saying without having to interrupt their flow of speech or anything like that. Okay, so that active listening. And then practicing leaving or exiting the conversation. the pleasantries that go along with it. Well, it was very nice to meet you, shaking someone's hand, asking them for their business card, referencing that you may connect with them on LinkedIn, for example, that type of thing. But the last thing that people communicate or say in a conversation oftentimes is the thing that people remember the most, even more so than the very first thing that was said in the conversation, which would be next, right? But so ending the conversation in a professional manner that presents yourself the way you like to be presented is very important. And in that way, you have to practice that in a way that's consistent with the brand that you're trying to put out there, okay? And then lastly, staying informed. Staying informed about things to talk about, making yourself an interesting person by being able to talk about things of interest to others. So having a well-rounded knowledge of things that are going on, everything from social activity stuff to more world event or business-related subjects that could be of interest to individuals to talk about. In a separate video, we talk about off-limit conversations and taboo subjects. So we'll dive a bit more into that. But being informed generally about what's going on in society, not to express an opinion, but to be able to acknowledge and once again to contribute at least points as that topic of conversation comes up.